Hello, everybody, and welcome into the large program, Tigers Tonight. I'm your host, John Maddox, joined as always tonight, joined tonight by the best co-host in all the land. We will start with our friend Bryan up in the northern offices of TSR. Bryan, how are you this evening, sir?
Not too bad. A little chilly, but we're getting used to it.
Yeah, it's currently thundering, lightning, and hailing outside my window over here in beautiful scenic Hernando, Mississippi. Speaking of Hernando, Larry, how are you?
Well, I'm not in Hernando. I am
Oh, that's right.
in. I'm in Mouse City. I'm in Orlando, and I am. It's not hailing. It was a balmy 79 and sunny today, so it was a tough life. I actually told him I was like, I think I'm just going to stay till March. Um, but no, it's fine, and I made it in this morning, and I'll be back tomorrow just as the storm leaves. So.
And we have the privilege of being joined tonight by former, I'm going to call him a great Memphis Tiger great, Gabe Kuhn.
Oh, thank you.
Gabe, how are you this evening?
I am doing well in beautiful East Memphis, dealing
right.
with this drizzle coming down right now.
Yeah, this is my second round of hail today. We had a little bit of hail about 9:30 this morning. Scared my poor cats to death. They were both asleep on the window, and all of a sudden the marble-sized hail starts hitting the window, and they're out.
Where'd you say you're from in Mississippi?
Larry and I actually both live in Hernando.
Okay.
Yeah.
Rock on.
And we're probably less than 10 minutes away from each other. But anyway, so made the trip to beautiful, scenic, crime-free Dallas, Texas over the Thanksgiving weekend, and Memphis fell to SMU by a final score of 34-31. We're going to run through some pictures here in a minute, but Gabe, I want to just kind of get your overall thoughts on how the game played out.
It was what we've seen the past 2 years, right? Where this team is not out-talented by anybody. They don't quit, they don't roll over, but the truth of the matter is when it comes time to go win a ball game, they have fallen short. And that last play was a microcosm of what we have seen the past 2 years. And it's just very frustrating, because you try to find answers for why this continually happens. Why are they bad on special teams? Why is the O-line so bad? Why in situational moments do they just sort of come up short? And there's no easy fix to it. You just have to sort of bear down and work on those things in practice. And at some point, you just look at what's happened the past 2 years with these close games, and it's less of a coincidence, and it's more of a trend, and it's a trend you have to break, and they've yet to do it.
Yeah, that's kind of been the rub, I think, is we've all felt that way, is like, okay, and it seemed like, and Bryan, you can jump in here, it seems like something different every week. Like it's the same subset of problems, but this week it's the run game, and then this week it's special teams, then this week it's this, and this timely turnovers, and like it just seems like we have basically 5 problems, but they keep whack-a-moling all year long.
Yeah, we mentioned that before, whack-a-mole. I mean, when you take a look at this game, I mean, the tale of two halves. I mean, I thought they did a really good job in the first half, but the second half, I mean, it was poor. I think they averaged 6.1, 6.2 yards, per carry or per attempt for rushing. Second half, it was like 2.4. It was just, I don't know. You can't put a whole game together this year. And we've talked about it all year. These little things that just keep popping up, and it's definitely frustrating. and we'll see some plays.
Larry, your overall thoughts?
Well, I think this goes back to what we've said over and over and over again: attention to detail. And when you're prepping for a game, one of the things that and Gabe, you've talked about this on Twitter before. We've actually talked about this. So you go out there, you have a series of plays, and you run them over and over and over and over again until you have them. It's just rote memory. And defense and offense are the same. You go through these things over and over and over again, and you have to take care of the little details, because what we're talking about here, guys, and you guys can all jump in, is in the clutch moment when you have to make a play. It looks like guys are thinking instead of reacting, and that's the difference. When you're in a tight game, and you're in one of these 50-50 games, it all comes down to, can you make a play in that moment? And I texted you guys when midway through the fourth quarter, and I said, I have zero confidence that this team is going to make that play, the key play. Mm-hmm. And I remember going through these things over and over and over again in practice. And we would, especially on like Thursday was our half pads day. And that was the day when we would go over the 6 or 7 plays over and over and over again to make sure that we had, it wasn't about, the physicality. It was about the mental aspect of it. Make sure that you got that down. And guys, the details, that's where we're losing these games.
And in those situations, to sort of add to your point, I think you sort of referenced this. You can't have paralysis by analysis. That's why you go so fast. That's why you deal with these things in practice and rep them so many times, is because in that moment you can't think. You can't slow down to sort of break down like you would in a film room or otherwise. You have to just go. And I look at that final play by Seth, and I mean, it might be one of the worst decisions he's made in a Tiger uniform to this point. It's just, it's so bizarre that was how that ended up at the end of that game.
Yeah, we'll get to that play in a minute. But, to kind of encompassing everybody's point here, I think it's been wash, rinse, repeat, right? Memphis goes out, gets a lead, gets in a hole, falls well behind, comes back, makes one play, and then can't make another, and just can't make that last play. To me, the game kind of turned on one play, and that was when we took Mordecai. They took Mordecai out and brought the backup in, Jennings, and it's 2nd and 9 from the 9-yard line after a boneheaded special teams play, one of the dumbest special teams plays I've ever seen. Number one, I hate fair catch at a kickoff, but number two, to do it inside the one, that was just a boneheaded play. But you have him 2nd and 9, his first pass, he throws it right to Oliver. Couldn't have, it looked like Savanta was running the route, and he dropped it. And then they went 95 yards for a touchdown. That, to me, is when the game turned. We weren't the same team. Memphis wasn't the same team after that. And that's what I tell people all the time. People want to blame officials, and they want to, a lot of people are like, oh, that last play. Well, you take that play plus as our friend Jeb just said, the field goal that got blown down, and then that missed extra point. That's huge. And again, special teams, Bryan, after such a great week, the last couple of weeks, especially last week, here we are again, special teams, missed field goals, and botched extra points.
Yeah, well, I mean, and dropped interceptions. I mean, just there's so many things we can point to, and I feel like we could say the same thing or have said the same thing every week. Just record it, and we'll just push play every podcast. I mean,
well, that doesn't make for very good podcast.
No, it doesn't. But still, I mean, it's just.
I couldn't wear my AC/DC hoodie, so I mean, we can't do that.
All right, so let's kind of look at some plays here. And, Gabe, one thing that Bryan has kind of harped on all season, and it was a great point. In the first half, when we were getting 6 and 7 yards a carry, we saw a ton of cutbacks by the running backs.
Yep.
Breaking it outside versus or finding a different lane. But all season, it's been like, okay, this is off left tackle, and the running back just takes the ball and runs off like, okay, I'm just going to go off left tackle, regardless of the fact there are 11 defenders waiting for me there.
Right.
And that has been very frustrating. But in the first half of this game, you saw something different. You saw guys cutting, moving a little bit. We'll start with this. This was the first Memphis touchdown. I mean, you go right there and you see Asa kind of dances, or was that, I think it was Sutton, kind of dances through the hole a little bit. And, and for the first time in a while, you've got a guy downfield blocking. Everybody's pushed outside. I mean, Gabe, that's been a sore point for us all year is, gosh, guys, you don't have to just smash it that's what she said, into the hole that it's designed to go into. Sometimes you've got to cut back. You've got to make an alternative path. And that's just something Memphis hasn't done all season.
And also, I mean, the cutback has to be there, right? And I think in a lot of situations, this offensive line has had some struggles. And right there, it's sort of like a split zone concept where you have Priestcorn on the backside kicking out that defensive end. And that creates a natural cutback lane if he's able to seal that off. But here's the other thing, too, is I think, and I talked about this all off season, differentiating run schemes, right? Run power one play, run counter, try to get people moving and play with those linebackers' eyes, because if you can play with those linebackers' eyes and get them side to side, get them thinking a lot, they're not able to fill downhill and stop guys for TFL, stop guys at the line of scrimmage. I feel like we see a lot of zone schemes, but not a whole lot else in regards to the run game and how they try to employ it.
Yeah.
How many times have we seen the safety come blitz off the strong side, even though the run play is going to go to the weak side? He makes a tackle for loss because he knows exactly where the blocker is going to be. There's no pull action, nothing like that. You're exactly right. How many times have we seen that?
And here's the thing, just sort of like letting you in on like Mike Norvell and what he tried to do, and Silverfield himself when he was the run game coordinator and how we ran things. We ran counter after counter after counter. Then we'd come back with an outside zone, then an inside zone. We differentiated so much, and then we'd also have schemes within games where, okay, they're lining up this certain way. We're going to play this a little different. We're going to play our counter scheme a little different. You just don't see quite the inventiveness that was here previous to Ryan, right? And I know that he has stuff in the bag. Like he's got plenty of run schemes in there in his head that he's ran in his various stops, but they just have to show on Saturday when the guys are out there and trying to execute.
Yeah,
Bryan,
I'd definitely love to see more misdirection because we haven't seen a lot of that at all. I think the past 2 years, which is just, and I know Silverfield was the run game coordinator. To me, that's why it's so frustrating.
Yep.
When you just the transition, it seems like Memphis hit a brick wall when Norvell left, and I'm like, you kept the same guy who had the run game coordinator. I'm like, well, I don't understand why the process wasn't smoother.
And Bryan, we've had this conversation off the air. Maybe, and obviously you live, you learn, and you have to make different. You go 6-6, 3-5 in conference for the second straight year. Differences have to be made. And maybe leadership has to change. But we always wondered, why isn't he more hands-on in that offensive line room? It worked for him before. He was very good at it. The group I was with, and even the groups after that, we had in 2018 the Joe Moore Award finalist at Memphis. Like that's for the best O-line in the country. That doesn't happen. Maybe if he's more hands-on in that room, a lot of things could improve. But we haven't seen him sort of do that yet and try to press that button.
Mm-hmm.
I think maybe part of that is being a first-time head coach. I liken it to being in a car wash without a car. And, you're just standing there and it's just, the water is just hitting you from every possible direction. And I think you have to kind of take a step back. But at some point, you're going into year 4 now. You've got to be willing to do what you're talking about, Gabe. You've got to be willing to say, okay, yes, I'm the head coach. And yes, I trust my staff, but my offensive line is struggling here. And I know that, I know my lane, just in general in business and life, I know what I'm good at. And that's where you need to be a little more emphatic and say, no, here's what we're doing. Because I agree with you guys. That has been frustrating that if as I like to call myself, a dumb guy with a podcast knows, if you come out with a certain formation, you're going to run a certain play. And if I can see that, then I know all these high-paid defensive coordinators see it. And again, to me, it goes back to what you said, no counters. We're going to have to play here in a minute, a reverse to score a touchdown. We haven't. And the problem is, yes, we scored this week because SMU's probably the worst tackling team I've ever seen. But it's always Gabe Rogers running that. Like there's no variation.
Right.
I think we tried it with skates against I think it was North Alabama, and it worked fine. But it's like, rock somebody else, because when you bring Gabe around behind, what's coming. Not it's going to be one or two things.
The reverse, John. How
You're
about not hand it off?
Well, you're going to either hand it off or Seth's going to keep it and go around.
That's what I'm saying, though. I'm saying, all right, you know what I'm going.
All right, so let's move on to the next play. This is kind of on the defense here. Man, Gabe, SMU torched us all day in man down the field. Like we had no answers for SMU downfield.
Yeah. And right here.
Yeah, this is the long, although this should have been OPI.
Yeah.
Kind of coming to the screen there.
And right there, you see basically an engage 8 if you've ever played Madden, right? Like you have cover 0 and nobody over top, and you're putting Davion Ross, who's 5'8", in a situation where you want to take a chance and you want to see if you can create some havoc on third down and bother the opposing quarterback. I don't mind Matt Barnes taking that opportunity, but you have to know your personnel, right? And right there, Davion Ross, it's going to be tough against the leading receiver in the nation for him to hold him one-on-one downfield.
Who, for some reason, didn't make a Blitnikoff finalist. Anyway.
Yeah.
All right. So this is their touchdown. And Gabe, you and Larry know this. This is a dead giveaway. It's man. You've got Curley coming across here. He's starting in, and he's just going to jump back out. And you got the follow coming in here. And I think that's Oliver, and he gets too far inside, and we've talked about this all year. He didn't get his feet back underneath him. Right there, he's done.
Yep,
like he's cooked right there. It's over because he's in a chair basically. If you watch it in real time, he's kind of sitting, and he can't get out there and get to Curley. And this is, it's a good play call too. That's I don't want to take anything away from SMU in this game because they they schemed us really well on both sides of the football. But right there, that's just a case of just not being fundamentally sound, I guess is the best way to put it. Because if you get your feet out from under you, you're done. You can't recover. Like Shakira said it best, the hips don't lie.
So here's the old DB coming out in me. So you've got help inside. So what you want to do is you want to stay on his outside shoulder. So you've got help inside. So what I would have done is so look at that, because you've got the linebacker here, right there, John. So you got the linebacker right there. So what you want to do is you want to stay on the outside, which I call a 3 technique, on the outside of him. And you want to, if he runs across the middle, you can trail, but you've got help here.
Yep. It would blow my mind if that's what he was taught in practice, right? To expect a full motion across the formation down there in the tight red zone. That's a common, a little pivot inside and out off the motion. Like that's an obvious tight red zone play and call. And it looks to me, that's just a mental lapse down there. And Larry, you're dead right. Like I don't understand. There's no help. Zero help to the outside, and you're to the field. You're
right. You can't turn your hips at all. John, go back.
You want to try to
turn his hips,
and you want to try to feed that. You want to try to feed that inside. If he's going to run an in-breaking route, you're good, right? But you just can't let this particular thing happen.
But once he turns his hips, he's done.
Yeah.
Even in man, I don't think he. Yes, you follow him to an extent, but when I played, I was told you don't ever want to see, in this case, you don't want to see the linebacker's number.
Well, you're not going to follow him all the way across the field, more than likely, John.
You're going to hand him off, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
But yeah, and boy, kind of unsung with this. How about the job Mordecai does to get a low snap on a timing play? Because that's a sheer timing play. You've only got so long to make that happen.
Good arm strength too.
Yeah, good arm strength, because that's a hard throw. People don't think about that throw a lot, but that's a tough throw to get it out across. All right, so this is the long pass to Ivory here down the sideline, because I don't think we did a good job of taking advantage of man-to-man coverage all day either. And this to Ivory proves it. You're isolated out here because these guys are they're dropping middle. They don't care about the outside, and you got to get hands on Ivory, right? You can't just give him a free release like that. And then he got grabbed, and they they didn't call it, but good concentration to make that catch down the sideline.
Mm-hmm. And good ball.
Yeah.
But you have to take advantage of man coverage. There was we look back at 2019 with DeMonte Coxey, right? Like that's a guy who, even if he wasn't getting separation, for a fact he's going to be able to get a chance to go catch that football. And I don't know if we've had that consistently so far this year. Javon Ivory, I think, actually did back half of the season came on strong and looked good, but you have to see that consistency game in, game out. And even with guys like Joe Skates, Eddie Lewis came on in the back half of the year, but there was some, game to game, there were some drops here and there. There's just not getting a whole lot of separation at the line of scrimmage. But based on this offense this year with a sort of lack of a run game, you have to have guys on the outside go win their one-on-one battles. And there were some inconsistencies there, I think.
And I haven't seen many back shoulder passes this year either.
Right.
That was something that Brady White. Now, again, I'm not trying to compare the two quarterbacks, but Brady White was the back shoulder master. And he could absolutely kill you with that pass. I would like to see Hennigan work on that this offseason.
Yeah, because that's a cheat code play. I mean, that is a cheat code play in a lot of ways.
Yeah, I don't understand. I mean, SMU tried to help us a lot. Like they ran a lot of man and they are poor tackling and we wouldn't take advantage. Now, this is every offensive lineman's dream right here.
I guarantee I know what's coming here. I guarantee out of this formation, I guarantee the left guard pulls. Guarantee it.
And we kind of sugar huddled on this. We didn't come out and we ran it twice. We ran the same formation twice, didn't give SMU a chance to sub, and kind of sugar huddled it and then ran up. And this, I don't know, I don't recall seeing this formation. You've got, three tight ends and
right.
Let's see here. Let's kind of run it forward slowly.
Let's see. Does the left guard pull?
Let's see how smart Gabe is.
Nope. I'm wrong.
But
interesting. Just an inside zone scheme. Little split zone again.
And another near disaster. Seth nearly drops the snap. But Bryan, part of that is probably when you're used to the shotgun snap, it's really difficult to say, okay, we're going to go under center and get the football.
Yeah, it is. And you don't see it from Memphis very often. Only in the red zone do I ever remember seeing him under center. So, yeah, I'm sure, I don't know how much time they practice that, at practice, but.
And obviously down here on the goal line, you're not necessarily hat counting. Like you're not just going to count every hat and make sure it's a perfectly good run look. But there's a lot of extra hats on SMU. There's 3. I count 1, 2, 3 that could have made this play.
Yeah, this is one that you do want to just take it where it's designed to go.
Right.
But boy, how about Asa just lowering the boom right there and dropping that SMU and carrying him into the end zone. That was
and there's certainly like Asa, I like his pass catching ability, and you can tell he's still engaged, locked in, ready to go. That's why he's been getting more totes just in general. But when it comes to like a guy like Sutton Smith, Jay Ducker, I feel like they have more open field ability where they could potentially break off some more explosive runs. And that's something that has been missing all year. The explosivity in the run game is just sort of non-existent in a lot of ways.
But Bryan, who did we say in our first show of the year was an X factor for the Tigers?
Martin.
Asa Martin. And, but to your point, Gabe, you're absolutely right. You've got to have – people have this misconception, I think, about college football today that it's all just throw all over the field and whatever. But when you decide you want to be a running team, you got to have that lightning and thunder is what used to be called, where you've got the last year. I tell you, a guy we've missed this year is Street Clark, because he was a guy. There was no when he didn't shuffle, because he had a little problem where he would try to dance a little bit, but when he would just hit the hole, he would do that. He would truck stick these poor linebackers, and he was just when he got it all going in one direction. But then, Gabe, that's where what you're talking about comes in, right? You got to run the counters. You've got to run the draws. You've got to do the things to get Jay Ducker and company into space, right? You've got to build plays so that they can play on their strengths, and let Asa be your third down back, catch the ball out of the backfield, catch screen passes, do some of the dirty work, because he's a good pass blocker too.
Yeah. And I mean, I have enjoyed him in the pass game a whole lot. The only thing, I just feel like he's been more locked in down the stretch, like more available to the coaches, doing everything because this is sort of his last hurrah. And that's why he's been getting more of that running work, right?
Yeah.
But if you notice, I mean, it was the same, was it the past 2 years, I believe. Martin, they wouldn't use him much at all in the first half of the season, but they rely on him in the second half of the season.
Yeah.
And that was frustrating to me, because in my opinion, I think he's the best back. He's the one that should be starting over anybody. Mm-hmm. To me, he's your Thunder. To Sutton Smith, he's your Lightning. Yeah. And I think, to me, it should be those two guys, that's toting the ball the most.
And know what the other frustrating part of the whole thing is? You have a good running back room. I mean, you really do. Like, that running back room is not devoid of talent. I think all those guys are overly capable, but just to see the run game sort of fall flat for a second, or for basically a second or third straight year, depending on how you count it out, it's something that is deeper than what talent they have, whether it's the O-line room or the running back room.
Yeah, here's another case of man coverage, and Jeremy Curley on Quindell Johnson. As much as I love Q, that's just a mismatch, because Curley's a flyer and Q got beat off the line. And that's something, one thing I will say about Memphis this year is you haven't seen a lot of that. You haven't seen a lot of just guys running free, right? You haven't seen a lot of huge bust in the secondary. This was, Memphis got burned because of scheme, right? Like, they schemed to get Curley on Quindell Johnson. And like I said, Quindell's the best player on defense, but that's just not a matchup he's ever going to win. Like, that's a no-win situation.
Burner. Right. He's not a burner. Like, he's not a guy who needs to be out there consistently guarding the fastest guy on the other team's offense, right? He's a helper. If he reads the ball and he's in a 2 high or 1 high look, he's supposed to break something up and help his corner out. He's not built to sit there and cover the deepest man one-on-one. He also he's really good in run support. So he plays up on his toes, ready to come down and help out. But speaking into this offseason, and obviously still a bowl game, that's a guy that I don't know how you replace a guy like Quindell Johnson just from a leadership standpoint, but they got to find somebody to be able to fill that void to a certain extent in that level of production.
Yeah, I told Frank, I was sitting next to Frank Bonner in the press box on Saturday, and I told him, I said, Quindell Johnson and Zay Collins have made themselves a bunch of money this year, and I don't mean NIL. Like, they can both play in the NFL. Like, they can both do it. Now, Zay may have to, or Quindell, I think, is probably going to have to move to maybe the linebacker, because I don't know that he can handle anything else.
Well, here's the other thing about Quindell and like safeties. You get so much opportunity on special teams, right? You don't have to be a 4-3 runner. His special team, like, and he's, and obviously we had him on the show, I don't know, about 3 weeks ago. I mean, he's willing, able, got a good head on his shoulders. Like, he's going to fit in wherever he goes and do his darndest. The only thing that'll hold him back is what we just saw in that play, right? Is if he's a safety over top in the NFL, you have to go try to make that play. And that's just tough for him, because I think he has limitations when it comes to straight line speed.
Yeah. Right. They'll scheme you on that. They'll hunt you.
Yeah.
And by the way, they'll look at this, like they'll go back, because that's what NFL coaches spend their offseason doing, is they'll go back and they'll watch this game and they'll be like, all right, well, if we ever face this guy, here's a way we can scheme him. I don't remember which play this was. Oh, this was a nice
you got man to man on the bottom side here. I don't know who
and
that is.
it's Ivory again, I think.
You got man to man down here. You got no safety help at the top. And he's going to take – he gets pretty much a free release right there.
Oh, yeah, and he kind of stutter stepped here to start, and then –
hardcore outside leverage from that corner too.
Yep, and then, and that's an example of scheme, because now you've got guys coming down the middle, the seam, so these guys, although they both don't have to pay attention, and then you got here, so this is a scheme thing, and Memphis did a good job of that, and – I
think we get this same play on the fourth down play on the last drive.
Yeah, Rodgers just runs a square in on that one, but
that's the same defensive scheme.
Yep, and then they're in zone here, and
okay, they faked the shovel pass there to Eddie Lewis.
Oh, they did,
which I enjoy, because they have run that time after time after time in the tight red zone.
Oh yeah, they do. He did. I didn't even
because there's the power scheme too. That's the only time. The only time they get into that power scheme where they pull the guard, keep him square, is in that shovel pass sort of look. And obviously, you want to see that more in the open field and see what they can do with that.
But to your point now, little things. This defender is charging towards the ball. He's not going to have time to get because. My boy's in the chair again.
Yeah.
And
hips are turned.
Even if he's not in the chair, he's gonna get clipped here.
We hope.
Oh no, he did. That's
I'm just saying.
See, and here's what I like. This is I do enjoy this play in particular, because this is noticing predictability in your game, in the film room, and saying, all right, let's run a play off of it. And right here, you'll see, I guess it's Austin Myers get out, sort of pull out. You'll see Eddie Lewis fake the shovel pass, which they've run a million times. It's something that SMU was sitting on. You'll see these linebackers just immediately attack downhill, and then he comes back out and pulls out to try to clear some room. I mean, this I do appreciate, because you're recognizing your tendencies and trying to play off of them and confuse a defense.
We went into game 12.
Go ahead, Ron.
It just seems that we need to see more of that, because it seems they only do that maybe once a half. Once or twice a game is when we see something like this, where they do something off of their predictability. And that's, to me, that's another big reason why the offense is not as potent as it was in years past.
Yeah. I completely agree. I completely agree with that sentiment. You need to see more of it. And again, just rewinding back to offensive game plans under Mike Norvell, it was, okay, this week we're going to run our split zone concept. We're going to run our outside zone concept. But, hey, they have this force defender that we're not as scared of, so we'll put a tight end on him. Like, there was just things within the game plan that changed. And it feels like in a lot of ways, and I'm sure they have some of those wrinkles in the system that Cramsey's running, but it feels like there's less of those wrinkles, a considerable amount less of those wrinkles, sort of game plan to game plan, team to team.
But boy, Alex, I didn't even pick up on the fake shuttle pass, but I love the subtlety of it. Mm-hmm. Like, it didn't look forced. He didn't oversell the shovel. He just,
and those linebackers are up out of there, right? You don't have to worry about them anymore. They're gone.
He got that linebacker with his eyes. I mean, that was, you roll that forward. He got him totally with his eyes, because you see him kind of stutter right there, because he thinks, again, the other team watches film too, and they've seen this play 1,000 times, and then that's what happens. And then he rolls into the end zone. Great downfield block too.
Yep.
But again, Gabe, somebody else got to be able to do that too. Like, you can't, because when you see that formation, you figure one of two things: either Eddie's going to get it on the shovel, or they're going to give it to Gabe on the end around. And somebody else has got to step up to do that. I think this is
Gabe Rogers getting it into rounds. I mean, it's very predictable, right?
Boy,
Like it's who you would give it into round to.
I know that I'm not supposed to do that, but man, this throw from Mordecai is something else. Again, they get Memphis in man coverage, and Mordecai just uncorks it. And as I used to say about Paxton, he couldn't have walked down there and handed him the ball any better. Like that's an incredible
Tyler Murray
throw.
downfield matched up with Curley.
No, that's Rice. It's even worse.
Or Rice.
It's worse. And how does I obviously don't have the wide view, but it's like, how does this happen? Like, because here's a lineman. That looks like Duckworth, and
that looks like. Well, actually, you might be right.
Yeah, it's a lineman, and I think that's a corner. So, like, how does Tyler Murray end up here and your corner or your safety is there? Like, that's, but again, I don't see the whole play, so I don't know what the scheme looked like, but that's just being out schemed. And again, what a great throw by Mordecai. Yeah. He's a heck of a quarterback. All right, let's move on here.
And I'll be honest with you guys, and I texted you guys right after this play that I thought that was the game. And the reason was because I felt like we had to keep them out of the 30s to win the game. And go ahead.
And last week I said, if you recall, if we were in the 30s, I feel pretty good. My worry was if it got into the 40s or the 50s, because I didn't think our offense was high powered enough to keep up with that. And to me, the big thing here is after that last touchdown, you miss the extra point.
Yeah.
And that's another one of those, Bryan, to bring back your word, that's another one of those little things, because now it changes how you call the rest of the game, because you've got to call thinking, okay, if I score a touchdown, I got to go for 2 at some point. And just changes the game.
And your focus, it's too much, too much thinking, because you shouldn't have to think about that. So, I mean, it could get you off focus as a play caller.
I should need the chart. That chart that they all carry around. I should be able to count on my kicker, who's been solid all year. But I think, when I watched, I think it was a messed up snap is what I think happened. Snap was kind of low, and Joe just couldn't get it put down. Here's another example of, like, this is done. Like, I don't know how else to say it, but Ross is inside here, and I like what he's trying to do. He tries, but you can't let him turn up like that. If you're going to give him that leverage, you got to push him out here, because once he gets his hips around and headed upfield, like I think this is Rice again. It's either Rice or Curley. I don't remember which one, but that was just that was actually a bad throw, because if he throws that out in front of him, he scores a touchdown on that. Memphis seemed to think it wasn't a catch, but it looked pretty good on replay to me. The ball didn't move. So, that's just another one. Now, here is Memphis football 2022 in a nutshell. Tigers fall behind 34-23. There's about 3 minutes to go in the game, and Memphis just decides to turn it on. Great throw from Seth.
Yep.
Just absolutely picture perfect. Good coverage too, but just, better throw.
Gabe, we talked about this on our show. Like the second half of Tulane. And I texted the guys, and I just said, Memphis will play better in the second half.
Right.
It's like the mental focus. They cannot maintain that focus for a full game.
Right.
And so when they get down, for some reason they can focus in enough to make it close. But the mental aspect of it, what do you think is missing there?
I sort of wonder, and like my easy answer would be experience, right? Like I feel like you need to be put in those situations consistently to really know the sense of urgency involved, right? And sometimes you'll see not younger necessarily, but guys who haven't gotten involved as much play up when they feel like something, when they get a swift kick in the ass right? And then they'll play down when they feel like they have everything handled. Okay, we still have time. Lackadaisical. It's okay right now. We're okay. We can figure this out later, right? And I feel like there's an element of that, but it's hard to really grasp onto because over the past 2 years, it's been different guys in these positions making the same mistakes. It's
and I mean, I can't speak for you, but I know you had Mike Norvell. All I can tell you is like we were taught, look, you're out on the field, like you stay focused. This is I hate to use the Josh Patton term, laser-like focus, but seriously, like you got to be focused in on that play at that time, and there's just no. You said urgency. I don't see that.
To your point, they need that. This team, it feels like they need that kick in the rear end, and that absolute dire circumstance to start executing at a high level. And I don't know why that is. You feel like after, however many losses it is, right? The
Six.
Close losses. I think it's 4
4
out of 6 were one score games. After that many close losses, you'd think you'd pull your head out of what and you'd get going earlier. But it just hasn't clicked yet. And also like it's hard for me also to say experience because there's guys out there that have plenty of experience at this level. So it's just a trend at this point, right?
Right.
Yeah. And this is what happens when you get old. I lost my train of thought, Bryan.
I think too that I don't think Silverfield is he may be. I don't know. Gabe would know. I don't think he's the yeller.
He's not. He's not. Never has been. You're correct on that.
Yeah, because I just see, especially we all see it on the sideline. Silverfield's more even keeled. He doesn't yell that much, and I just feel he was, if he would be more vocal, if he would start getting on players a little bit more, I think you would start seeing stuff, turn around a little bit.
I think there's something to that.
I said that earlier in the year. Which game was it where it was a horrendous call?
The catch, no catch at ECU.
Oh,
it was the Houston game because it was at home, and I forget which play it was. But I flashed back to Justin Fuente against UT Martin, his first year, and Justin just went after an official, and he got a 15-yard penalty. But what that showed me was that Justin was ready to fight for his team. And I just don't.
It sends a message.
I just don't think Ryan is built that way. I just like Bryan. I just don't think that's his personality. But if that's not your personality, you got to have somebody on that coach's sideline that is their personality. If you're not going to yell at people, you got to have a yeller. We saw it a couple weeks ago. I don't remember who it was, but Florida State was playing, and they were up big late. And somebody made a bad play, and Mike just went off and yelled at the guy. Yeah, it was a Syracuse. They're up 34-3, and they're on cruise. But Mike went up and he yelled at the guy because he did something stupid. I forget what it was. But then he went over and told him he loved him. And the guy went right back out there, and they threw him the ball, and he caught it and scored a touchdown. And that's what you need. That's, Gabe, what you're talking about. That's the swift kick in the ass that you need every now and then. Is you need some.
It shouldn't be the other team giving you a swift kick in the ass.
That's true, but
and I think for Ryan, like you say, he needs maybe a designated yeller, right? If that's not part of it, I played for him. That's not necessarily part of the yeller guy. It's not part of his personality, but I think it almost at this point you have to make it part of your personality. Yeah. These are circumstances now, like that leash that was before the season probably substantially longer is shorter. This fan base is in a different spot. This athletic department is in a different spot. And if you're going to continue to just sort of let guys get by and not give them that swift kick, it results like you've seen will continue to follow. So if it's not part of his personality, it needs to become part of his personality pretty fast.
Man, what a throw by Seth right here.
Yeah.
Like we've been on Seth a lot this year for overthrowing balls and But man, he made a couple like that is I wish I had the end zone view of that because
He's so
is a
talented. He really is.
tight window right there. I mean, that's because you got to get it there. There's a little PI right there. Probably he's probably turning him with that shoulder a little bit, but you got to get that. There's only really like that much of a window that you got to get the ball in because he's coming over too. But man, that is a perfect throw. The only thing I would have liked to seen there is maybe up a little higher to where Javon's the only one that can get the ball. But I don't want to tell Seth to throw the ball high because, he does that a lot. And Gabe, I want to ask about that. Is that a excitement thing or is that a footwork? Does it look like a fundamental, a footwork or an excitement thing to you, the way Seth tends to air? And he does it a lot.
I think it's, at that point when it's recurring, it's sort of footwork fundamentals, right? You can only be so excited during a game. If it happens several times during a game, it's like, well, was he excited, in the first quarter and the third quarter and the fourth quarter? Yeah. So I would have to say it's his footwork and such, which is usually like most of the time with Seth, everything's relatively tight. Like the footwork, the presence in the pocket, where he tries to place balls, usually relatively tight, but he still has those moments where they just get away from him. And right here, my gosh, I'm sorry I get distracted watching this film, but I don't. Austin Myers and Jonah Gamble just sort of letting the guy split right down the middle right there. I don't quite know what's going on.
Oh,
in that situation.
During this year when we had film review where it's just like they just let the guy walk by. I mean, not even touch him. Don't even look at him. It just turn your back on the guy, and it's like.
Well, when I played, it was called a lookout block. You let the guy go and you yell look out. But this play is important to me for a couple of reasons. Number one, it's a different kind of play because it is kind of a jailbreak a little bit. Yeah, I don't know. Well,
go back. Let me see how they were lined up. I'm curious on this. Okay.
We'll go super slow here.
All right. Slide right. Okay.
Yeah. And so Priest Corn, I don't know.
This is bizarre because
he went out too far.
Shouldn't you check down before
Wait, go back one more time. Sorry.
I don't know.
This is why we have you.
One more time at the first look at it.
All right. Let's go. We'll just roll from here because this is almost over.
Okay. Down lineman. Okay.
Priest Corn's going to go out here.
So Austin is staring down the guy that's manned up on Priest Corn. These two inside guys are going to play a game. These linebackers are. Let's see exactly which guy this is.
I think it is.
It's the down lineman.
I think it's no.
I think it's the linebacker, the first linebacker. Okay. Yep, so technically,
no. Wait a minute. No, it's this guy.
It's the down lineman.
Wow.
Wow.
And 50 protection. And that's also okay. So 50 protection means there's 5 guys in the protection. 66, 77. So once you see, I believe that's Asa in the backfield, can't really tell. But once you see him check out of there, if there's any inside threat, if the linebacker is to come into the A gap like he does here, the tackle squeezes down and the guard squeezes down because you take the inside threats and let the outside threats off the edge. Austin Myers here just didn't recognize quick enough. Jonah Gamble actually does the right thing here, squeezing down on that linebacker, but Austin Myers was late to react. Again, a mental mistake.
And a seemingly little thing because Seth breaks out of this.
Right.
And again, I think this play is kind of important. I don't know how he got away from him. Because Seth right here, he's rolling to his left, throws back across his body. Yep. This is going to become important here in a few minutes. And I love what Rock does here. He just kind of sits there. Larry and I have talked about that all year, that guys start running, and all you got to do sometimes is just sit down. And he gets interfered with. All right. No, that's right. They tried to call target on that, which would have been ridiculous. But Rock just does a really good job of just kind of, making himself available. And that's something that we've struggled to see receivers do this year, is make themselves available. Like they've done just a poor job of that, of just, go out and make yourself available. And now
Wide receivers has been very poor this year.
Yeah, and I think it's just been, again, a bunch of little things. Let me speed this up a little bit. All right, so this is the fourth down play that we talked about earlier to Gabe. And again, all Gabe does is I think it's Gabe. Yeah, it is. It just runs out. And
It's
then
the same defensive look that we saw earlier. He does a square in instead of a skinny post, but it's basically the exact same look defensively. You've got outside leverage, and they're playing. And again, we've talked about this earlier in the year. The soft spot of this defense is going to be the middle because they're basically playing umbrella coverage.
I don't know what that linebacker's doing.
he didn't either.
Zero idea.
Join the club.
He's
Like, brother, once you see the other linebacker actually has the back and man, so he could have just followed Gabe the whole way. You know?
Yeah. All he's got to do is be the deepest of the deep.
Right.
I'm not sure. He literally is looking at Seth's eyes, but you're right, Gabe. He should be back here at about the 30.
I guess theoretically he would have the tight end because this is a 7-man protection again. I guess theoretically he has the tight end and man, but that tight end's going nowhere. And if he does check out late and you throw it to him, you'd be able to go make that tackle theoretically.
You're going to make the tackle before he gets the first down, right?
Right, because here's the downside of shotgun. You're not really 4th and 10. You're 4th and about 18 because Seth's got to get the ball out. And you're going to see. I think it's Asa.
But John, look at the top. Look at the top. We're talking about Gabe being open. Look at the top. Where the hell's the quarterback?
Oh, he's over there. He's there. He's just playing him outside.
Oh, okay. I can't see him. Okay, okay. I'm sorry.
Yeah, but
that's just a square in.
And another good throw by Seth. And oh man, I just noticed Gabe almost dropped that.
Yeah, he body caught that one. Fourth down, man. You get a little tighter, huh?
Yeah.
You don't want to use those hands as much. You got to trust everything.
With all apologies to Chris Crawford, booty holes were tight at this point. Boy, he almost dropped that.
So to your point, right here, you've got first down, so you get the clock stops because you get a first down. So now we get into this clock management, and you are in field goal range. Right? There's no doubt you're in field goal range. So at this point, you've got 56 seconds, and you are thinking, I think we're all thinking, get in the end zone, right?
Yeah. And
take your chances.
I asked Ryan about that, and he said,
don't make a mistake.
When we got inside the 10, tying the game came off the board for me. He's like, we're inside the 10.
100%.
It's off the board until it's on the board again, right? Until you throw it in completion and there's 3 seconds left.
Yeah.
So now we're down to 14 seconds, and this is this seminal play. But what we haven't shown was the place in between here, because I believe we ran the football one time, did we?
Yes, from the 56 second mark, the next play was a running play, and then we burned our last time out, which
you could have instead. And let me just throw this out. You could have walked up and spiked the ball.
Yep. It would have made this third down, but
it would have been third down, which is fine because you're going to the end zone anyway. But anyway, I digress. Moving on.
All right. So the Tigers are in trips here. SMU, I think, only brings 4.
Yep.
So, I mean, because they know, but now Seth starts heading out to the left. Now, Seth is a right-handed quarterback. If this were me, we'd be fine because I'm left-handed. But it is a tall order to ask a quarterback to roll out, especially in such a pressure situation. And if Gabe breaks here,
he's got to play here if he can drop that in the bucket over there. But boy, oh boy!
But that player, that guy. I mean, these two guys zoned off here at the goal line. That's going to make it impossible.
Throw. Right? It's an NFL throw. I'm just saying.
Right. Theoretically.
But see, here's what we talk about.
It's too late.
And we talk about feet and hips. Look at Seth's feet.
Yeah.
Like he's not. You can't get anything on the throw. And I've watched this a dozen times, and I think he was trying to throw the ball away, and it just kind of fluttered on him. because
Yep.
the way he
It
the
didn't
way
get
he
high
just
enough.
yeah, the way he just kind of tossed it, it was
Yeah.
like he was trying to throw it into the second row. And hey,
Yeah.
well, it wouldn't have mattered anyway because Gabe's out of bounds.
Yep.
So it's not going to be a catch. But that is one of those things, you're not under immense pressure. I mean, you are a little bit, but I'd like to think, you've still got this much field to work with.
I would have hit the referee over there on the sideline.
Here's the thing I really, and I've gone back and forth with some people on the play call because people will say, well, it's a results business. You're saying you hate the play call because of the result. And sure, there's probably part of that. But they bring 4, they're dropping 7, and you're rolling out into a flood concept with nothing backside. So you have 3 guys going all to the field side. It's an easy play to cover, right? It's just easy play to cover. And then you add insult to injury by rolling Seth away from his throwing arm. And again, like this is not saying it's just the play call. That's the reason this ended the way it did. Seth obviously added insult to injury, but everything about this situation right here encompasses the lack of situational awareness and situational football that has been prevalent the last 2 years.
Okay.
Gabe, I have said, and you and I both know this, when you're on the field, you can tell when your coaches get nervous. I've felt it. You felt it. I have looked at the way they play. They play like they think the coaches are nervous. That's just my take.
There's some truth to that, but here's going back to this. So all year, Caden's
You leak
been
him
your
out.
guy.
Yeah.
Yes, I'm with you. And that's what I was going to mention in a second is I personally, when you look at the flood concept out to the front side, in that situation, when you're rolling everything to that side and you're trying to get the defense going all to one side, why not sneak him out the back? That's a consistent play in the red zone that tends to work. But I would imagine they had somebody manned up on him that would have made it tough.
Or if you had the running back, go the other direction, like a fake handoff, move him out to the right. Maybe he pulls a linebacker or two going the other direction to free up the middle.
You know what's undefeated besides billable hours and father time? A wheel route in the red zone to a running back and a play action fake to a tight end. Like those things are undefeated. That's why everybody's like, God, why do they run the same play? Because it works like that.
Yeah.
That's why they run the play. But
this hasn't worked in all the times we've seen it, this play, and we've seen it several times. We saw it at ECU last year. We've seen it a couple of times this year. In the clutch moment, this play has not worked.
Man, you have a window right there. And if you complete
he's short though.
Yeah, but if you complete it, you've got time to. If he gets down, now that's the other thing.
But then here's the other thing that defenses are taught this day.
Just lay on him.
Lay on him. Don't let him get up.
Don't let him get up.
Knock the ball out of his hand. That'll like that type of thing.
Boy, yeah. I watched this and I watched it back and I'm like, why is Caden not involved? Why is Asa not involved? Because remember, Asa's who got you down there on a big screen pass. Something else we don't run enough of are screens. But boy, just like I think Gabe, you said it best, just like a microcosm of the entire season is right here. Like Memphis does, like this is pretty well blocked.
It's just situationally play call, execution, situationally poor football, right? Like that's, if we're just breaking it down to what this particular play is, time on the clock is just bad situational football. And it just rears its ugly head week after week.
Games, you can't be poor situational football.
You can't.
I mean, 4 one possession games this year. There was 8 last year and 4 the year before that.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Tom Brady has won 6 or 7 Super Bowls off of situational football, man.
Well,
If you can master it, and also like and situational football is really sort of the little things that you talk about, Brian. Like if you can master it, you win ball games that are close, that are sort of coin flips. That's what it is.
We talked about this earlier in the year. At the beginning of the year, the very first show that we had, well, the very first show with this season, we talked about the 50-50 games that we had this year. We are over in our 50-50 games.
Yep.
Can we just take a second, and I know this doesn't matter, and appreciate how freaking high Gabe Rogers and the defensive back are in the air right here? Like, can we just appreciate that? Because, I mean, that's the other reason I think he's trying to throw it away, because like the DB made a great play to go up and get that. But yeah, like Gabe is so far in the air, it takes him a second to come down and land. But, you know, that was pretty well defensed on the back end too by SMU. You know, they had 3 guys back there ready to make a play, or 2 guys ready to make a play. But anyway. All right, so that's a recap of another tough loss for Memphis, 34-31. We're going to get to some other stuff now. I think, Bryan, you had a couple questions. You wanted to talk a little bit more about the what ifs back in 2018.
Yeah, because there's always that. You know, should Silverfield be fired because he's not living up to Norvell's standards? I mean, it just got me thinking, and I wrote about it. What if Norvell had the standards of today? So. Right. And so I like to get Gabe's opinion, because I've talked to some former players and staff members that were on that 2018 team. If there was NIL and instant transfer back in 2018, would the I didn't say majority, but the major players, how many would actually have stayed at Memphis so that Memphis could have had that Cotton Bowl run?
Not as many. And the truth of the matter is, in the day of NIL and everything else, that's what you have to deal with. It's roster attention consistently. And if we're being completely forthcoming and frank about what 2018 was, there was a lot of guys on that roster a little bit incensed and annoyed, right, with how that season went. 8-6, losing games, second half adjustments weren't made. So I think that's an interesting point you bring up, because in this day and age, there would have been guys that were making plays in 2019 that probably wouldn't have been around, right? That would have found greener pastures, if you will, for themselves. And obviously I don't know exactly who that would be and how that would happen and the names, but it's you know, if we're looking at the actual feelings within that locker room post 2018, I think there would be very similar ones, right? There's a lot of guys that weren't happy.
Yeah, and I think that's why, you know, I wrote the article, because I know I'm a positive Paul, but you know, that's why to me it's a little unfair to say, or holding Silverfield to Norvell's standards, because I mean it's different circumstances. In some ways you can compare, but I don't think it's just a blanket statement, oh, he's not living up to Norvell's production. Well, the production was different. I mean, there was different rules back then.
I don't think it's a production thing. This is, and we've just talked about this. Yeah. This is more about, it's not attrition. It's details. It's winning. You said it best, Gabe. It's winning the games, the close games, situational awareness. And and you even said it as well. You know, the other team kicks you in the ass. Well, you shouldn't have to have the other team kick you in the ass to get you going.
Well, it's not, to me, it's not production, it's perception. And, you know, Bryan, as I said to you, the proof is in the pudding. And yes, the NIL situation is much better, obviously, at Florida State than it would ever be at Memphis.
Right.
But Mike has improved every year. And Mike's dealing with the same thing. Maybe not. Well, he's dealing with the transfer thing probably from a depth perspective, whereas Memphis probably loses starters. But part of being successful as a coach, as a business owner, as a business person, as a student, is adapting to your environment. And I think that is where Memphis is struggling a little bit to go, okay, here's the new environment, but we still want to do this. It's like when, and I'm not comparing, Lord, I'm not comparing Ryan Silverfield to Larry Porter. Let me just say that again. I'm not comparing Ryan Silverfield to Larry Porter. But Larry wanted to come in here and run I formation, 2 backs, 2 tight ends in the whatever CUSA at that time when everybody was spread. And it took him a year to figure out, well, you can't do that. Well, you don't have a year to figure out. I've said that with NIL and instant transfer, which, let me be clear, I'm madly in favor of both of them. You have to have that GM, CEO type, and that's not your coach, but you got to have what was the character in Moneyball? You got to have that guy. You got to have somebody that his entire job is roster and NIL management and making sure, this sounds dirtier than it is, but making sure guys are happy from a financial perspective and making sure the NIL things are going in the right direction, unofficially, officially. And that to me is what Memphis is going to have to focus on, because that's something Ryan cannot control.
Yeah.
He can't. That's out of his wheelhouse.
I will say, I think for Ryan, with the NIL portion of everything and sort of people in the seats, I think he can control that to a certain extent. Like trying to, allow access to media members at practice, trying to get the normal stuff in the news circulated about the program.
Yes.
Like that part of it, I think he could create more excitement. Now, I'll say this, to Brian's point, circumstances tough as hell. Like, let's not even, like, we can't fake it. COVID, NIL era, conference realignment, a whole lot of things going on. If you ask him, he's not using those as excuses, because there's a lot of people that had to go through the same things and they're coming out on the other side looking good. The issue I would say with, listen, I think you can compare the beginning of Norvell to Silverfield, and you can say he's not living up to it because look at special teams, right? It's just non-existent, right? It's just there's a lot of things about them that are awful. And I think for a lot of the time through Fuente and through Norvell, you just took them for granted. You're like, okay, we have Jake Elliott, we have Riley Patterson, we have all of these types of guys, and we're able to just sort of we know that extra points are a given, field goals are a given. Our kickoff coverage is going to be great because they're going to kick it through the back of the end zone every single time. Our punting situation was in solid standing. And now that's fallen off. The run game under Norvell was fantastic. 2,000-yard rushers in 2018, 1,500-yard rusher in 2019. That's fallen off. So as much as I do want to give him a little bit of insulation, the truth of the matter is there are things that are fully in his control that have spiraled to a point of either complete futility or just average, and that can't happen.
And the other thing I want to add is player development, which we've seen a couple of guys, Caden, Xavier Collins, Quindell Johnson, but in general, you haven't seen that guy. You haven't seen that Anthony Miller that goes from walk on to NFL player. You haven't seen the Darrell Henderson who goes from a 3-star to a starter in the NFL. You don't see that player development.
But I think there's a level to what you're saying. Like I'll give you a little bit on that. But also I think that some of those guys, it's luck, right?
Yes,
it's just
absolutely.
having the right guys and finding who they are in high school. And that also comes down to you of saying, okay, recruiting. Right, he's got high recruiting rankings, and I think that's worth
he's
something.
Getting players,
but also like Fuente and Norvell, they went through the cracks and they found the guys that really fit the system, guys that were completely overlooked. And
because what is his system?
Right. I think that's a relative. Like, what's the idea? And I said this the entire year. What's the identity? What's the identity of this
What are
team?
you? What are you? Do you want to run? If you want to run, that's fine. Then run. But you're going to have to be creative. You're going to have to find ways to do it, and you're going to have to coach that. But whatever it is you're going to be, look, when I played defense, we knew what we were. Okay, we played the 4-2, and we played we played five guys with a monster. Okay, four defensive backs with a monster. We knew exactly what we were, and we practiced the shiznit out of it until it was rote, and we knew exactly how we were doing it. And the coach, you came in as a freshman. This is what you're going to do. You practice, you work out, you to this play this role, and that's the problem.
Yeah.
That is the core
I agree.
problem.
I was told today that I'm been soft on Mike, and I just don't agree with that at all. But or not Mike, but Ryan. I'm willing to give him a little bit of grace because of what Brian's talking about with that, and the other situation that I have to think about: new offensive coordinator, new defensive coordinator. And, Ryan stood up there and told us, well, Tom's going to run our offense and he's got the same terminology. And I just kind of looked at everybody like, I have never met two offensive coordinators that have the same terminology. Never. It doesn't happen.
Well, but here's what I think is smart about that is I think if you're Silverfield, to keep the same terminology with the players on the roster, I think that because like you look at Alabama, how many guys they've had in and out of their their coordinator position. At this point, Nick Saban has taken it upon himself to have whoever comes in there use the terminology that they use at Alabama. So I think your point's there, and I think it's fair. But I liked that about the messaging in the offseason because just knowing offenses and how to learn them, keeping terminology at least similar or the same is. I don't know, 70% of the battle in a film room of trying to understand what these guys want you to get done.
How much of the excuse that we're young, because you hear that a lot, and me and John go back and forth on the best back-to-back best recruiting class, and John's like, what do you say? You got to start producing. But
right. Well, you've got to start producing, and my bigger point is that come November, there is no such damn thing as a freshman.
Yeah.
Like that, you're not a freshman anymore. We're 8 games deep. You're not young. Like, and if you are, that's on you and the coach.
For Gabe, what year did you really feel that, this year I can be dominant?
Yeah, that's
second, third. When was that year that it clicked for you?
So it was different circumstances, right?
Mm-hmm.
I'd say about 6 games into my freshman year under Fuente, I knew exactly what was expected of me. Even though I was a freshman, I was a little bit inexperienced, only 6 starts under my belt. I knew what to do. So that whole next year, I felt like I could dominate. I did have an injury in the offseason, but I felt comfortable within the offense. Now, when we had a coaching switch, and there was different terminology and there was different things that we were trying to understand and they're trying to get through to us. I didn't feel comfortable for at least a year in Norvell's system. I mean, because they had, if you'll remember, I mean, I was right tackle, then right guard. I played left tackle the first game. They were just moving me all over the place to fill in the gap. So it took me about a full year in Norvell's system. And part of that was I found Norvell's system, the complexity of it and the nuance in it, a lot harder to understand than Fuente's. Fuente's whole personality and his offensive system is KISS. Everyone keep it simple, stupid. So it was just very easy, right? Zone right, zone left, pass protect, straight back, rollouts. Like it was very simple. In Norvell's, there was a lot of more intricacies. We're running counter, we're running power. We have a 5-man protection, a 6-man protection. We have a squeeze protection. So it depends on the offensive system. But at some point, the young excuse just has to be out of the vocabulary, because no one at this point with Ryan Silverfield, no one cares if you're young. All they care about is the execution and not being 6-6 and 3-5 in conference. right,
Here's
for a
why
third straight year.
Yeah, and then here's why I've always said I believe he gets he should deserve to get a fourth year. I'm a firm believer. Even when
I'm there with you too.
Here, my mantra is a coach should have one recruiting cycle before you decide you want to make a change. And that's why I think, because when you look at the quote unquote back-to-back best recruiting classes, they're sophomore. That first best recruiting class, they're sophomore. They're true sophomores right now. That's why I said next year is the year I think they should be able to take off and is expected to take off. That's why I think he gets should deserve another year, because that's his fourth year. His best recruiting class will be juniors, and there should be zero excuses for next year.
Hey, I agree with that. And also, I think a fourth year is due because it hasn't been a disaster, guys. Like,
right, exactly.
Like you can sit here and you can say there's been plays and games where complete blow-ups. That was a disaster in particular. That last play against SMU, disaster, right? But it hasn't been just a blow-up. They have played very close games with good teams. They beat UCF for the first time. They beat Mississippi State at home last year. And there have been pretty triumphant moments. I do think the bad has outweighed the good the past 2 years in a lot of ways. But we can't sit here. Like, it would have been easy if he was 2-10, right? And you'd say, okay, no, hell no. You can't bring him back. But 6-6 is that number where you say, okay, a lot of people are incensed. A lot of people want him gone. But can we really sit here and with certainty say that this has been a complete disaster and he can't coach a lick and he's this, he's that? I don't know if we're there yet. So I have always been, even with the 4-game losing streak, if he would have been 5-7, probably a little bit of a different discussion. But I always figured with bowl eligibility, another year should have or will happen and probably should happen.
But the leash has got to be shorter because
and I think it will be.
And it will be.
If he comes out of the gate 1-3, no, I mean
that's not acceptable. Yeah.
And like Jeb said in the message boards, and darn him for stealing my thunder. There's going to be great coaches next year. You don't have to make a coaching change right now, thinking that this is the crop.
And Memphis has become Memphis in the group of 5 now. Like, because conference realignment ended the way it did, like you were left out of the show and there was nothing you could do to get put in the show. Let's be honest. The way it's sitting right now, still a good group of 5 job. And I know with certainty, right? I know with certainty. I can tell you there are guys that would want this job if it were to come open. And good name guys.
They would fall all over themselves to take this job.
So there's also, and if you want to go the Mike Norvell, Justin Fuente route, there are plenty of offensive coordinators out there that are young, that are up and coming, that would be willing to take this job as well. Let's be honest, it's a winning job at this point. But I don't think it's smart financially or on the field to completely rush out of it after this year. Because let's say you fired Silverfield after this year, you're going to lose the roster. That roster retention, you're not going to keep any of the roster. Signing day is right around the corner because of early signing day. What are you going to do? That recruiting class probably isn't going to get all the way through. I mean, so there's a lot, to me, at this moment in particular, a lot more negatives than positives to moving on from Ryan Silverfield.
You're not guaranteed to hire a better coach than what you've already got. I think that's step number one. So unless you have someone in mind already, but here's so I think to your point, I said this actually a couple of weeks ago. At this point, you've got to ride this, and we actually talked about moving assistant coaches, but to the point of giving someone a fourth year simply because they need a full recruiting class, I disagree with that, and I'm going to explain why. In today's era, when you can transfer freely, it doesn't take as long to build a roster as it used to. And so I think that there's no doubt in my mind that Silverfield's the best head coaching recruiter of my lifetime. I don't think that's up for debate. I told him that on the show. Mm-hmm. But I think that in terms of player development and in terms of building a program, he has lacked. And the problem goes back to exactly what you and I talked about, Gabe, is that what is the identity? And until he establishes an identity, what he likes to do, how he likes to play, it can't be today we're going to do this, tomorrow we're going to do that.
Yeah.
That's not how it works.
I think he knows. I mean, he's openly said it in press conferences. He wants that Mike Norvell.
He doesn't coach that way, Bryan. He doesn't coach that way.
Then show me if that's who you want to.
That's where we were saying it's not his personality. He needs to change his personality or find that offensive coordinator.
He wants to let his coaches coach. There's no question about that. But
then do it
at this point, right?
Yeah,
if you want your identity to be your identity, you have to go make it your identity.
And if
right?
you go
and that comes back. It's sort of full circle of get your hands back on what you need to get your hands back on.
It's his program. It's got to be his identity.
Right. And if you say, I don't trust these coaches, well, then why the hell did you hire them? And look, I've said it before, and people say I'm crazy, but I will die on the hill that the Ryan Silverfield tenure is an exact mirror of the Josh Pastner tenure as the basketball coach.
Well,
there's virtually no difference.
And they both have one thing in common. They were inexperienced guys who had never been –
it was the continuity hire. It was the continuity hire. Right?
They had not followed the.
And I think there's some fairness to that.
But if you go back and read Gary Parrish's articles about Josh, when Gary was wrote a lot about Memphis, and he interviewed other coaches, their overwhelming lineup was Memphis does not have an identity. Memphis does not know who they are, and the players on the team. This week, if you turn the ball over once, you get yanked out on the bench. The next game, you can stay out there and make 6 turnovers. And it was never there. And that feels a lot like this now. But see, here's the thing. Tommy West talked about this when he left, and I'm not going to go through. I don't want to relitigate all that. But he said at some point, winning's not enough. And in today's and people hate when I say this, but college football is entertainment and television content. That's it. It is content. And if you don't put an engaging and entertaining product on the field, why does Alabama win? Well, they have the best players, but they also put an exciting brand of football on the field. Why was Boise State so good for so long? And why did ESPN love Memphis so much? Because, my God, it might end up being a 56-48 game.
But that's the other thing too, and it's an easy program to sell. It is at this point. It's been at those levels. It's been on game day. It's Cotton Bowl, best group of 5 team, been in the AAC championship, tied for the same amount of times as the most, right? Like been in that spot. So I don't know why there hasn't been that full effort to push that program in that way and sell the program in that way. But it needs to happen. It needs to happen.
Yeah. And Bryan, the thing that's kind of weird to me is Ryan can obviously do that with recruits. I mean, because the proof is in the pudding. He is selling this program to some great recruits.
Yeah. And this recruiting weekend, there will be some more fireworks this weekend. So,
and that's, I think, what frustrates a lot of us is, I said that Tommy was the right guy for the job at the time. A Memphis football coach has to be a good coach and has to be a little bit of a John Wayne. You have to not give a damn what people think about you and just go out and be who you are and sell the program. Justin was that. Justin was a no-nonsense, had the personality of a wallpaper, but nice guy, always nice to me. Can't really, and Gabe, I know you played for him. Nice guy, can't really complain, but
genuine guy for sure.
He was very genuine. And I always thought Justin would be an NFL guy because all Justin wants to do is coach football. He don't want to kiss babies and shake hands. That's not his personality. Mike was a completely different personality. Mike was everywhere in the community. He's at Memphis in May. He's at Gibson's Donuts. He's all over the place. And he talks about how much he loves Memphis and all that. And you're just not getting that now. You just don't get this sense of ownership in the program. It's like Ryan is trying to just be a football coach. And I'll tell you, the first time I saw Justin was at 2 Chamber of Commerce events. He came and spoke at 2 chamber luncheons. That's how I met him, was at a chamber luncheon. And that's what you have to do. You have to get out and sell the program a little bit. You have to go out and say, hey, Memphis football, look, Rex did it. This is not new territory. Rex Dockery famously said, come to our games, be entertained when your favorite team's not playing. When Alabama or Tennessee or Mississippi aren't playing, come to the Liberty Bowl and watch us play. Like there was no misconception about Memphis's place in this world. And I think that is one of the biggest struggles. And yes, the performance has obviously got people upset. And yes, if you don't put an exciting product on the field, people aren't going to be in the stands. And that does fall on the coach. But the coach has to be involved in the marketing. Like
it's predictable, it's boring, and he's not engaging. That is a bad combination.
What but would you make in the offseason? What changes would you make?
Okay, all I have to say to you about that, and we just talked about Dustin just not being exciting.
Yeah.
Dustin Fountain. I will never forget that as long as I live. Those commercials with Justin Fuente. I will never forget those. But that's how you sold like we all joked about it for a year and a half. Like Dustin Fountain's coming to the game this week. Like we all joked about it. And I think that would get fans if you came out and said, I think was it Justin or Mike that was wait till this year?
That was Justin.
Yeah, wait till this year.
Fuente.
Well, just don't.
I got that poster around here somewhere.
just don't ever bring back Join the Revolution, please. Nobody ever bring that one back. But you've got to have marketing, right? You've got to have a catchphrase. You've got to be a meme. Like you just have to do things differently.
Unless you're winning 9 games, 10 games a year. Right?
But okay.
You don't have to be all that engaging if you're winning your ass off. But see, if you're not, if you're 6-6, you gotta make sure that you're like and Fuente, I thought, did a good job. Even that 3-9 year was wait till this year, and he still was engaging to the fans, to the media, trying to get people involved. And then the winning came, and then you don't have to play that as hard. You don't have to play to all of the selling of the program once you're winning. But at this point, you have to find a way to get people excited. You just do.
Yeah, and
I sense from the fans, and I will just say this, but from just being in the stadium, there is a real lack of belief in the trajectory of the program right now. And I think it's palpable.
But part of that is what Gabe and I are talking about, in that you have to reinforce the fact that next year is going to be better than this year. Yeah. Like you have to shout that from the mountaintops. And yes, the product on the field is not great. But I still think if Memphis is averaging 45 points a game and goes 6-6, people don't give a crap. They're going to come because the games are entertaining and fun, and you have to make it an event. Like that's the other thing. You want to increase attendance, make people feel like they have to be there.
Hell, John, the Cubs did it for 100 years.
Yeah. And, but they engage the community, and I think Gabe, that's a great point that you've got to have that engagement. And all right, so I want to close with this. I wanted to ask you, Gabe, as somebody who did, what is your mindset going into a bowl game as a player? What is your mindset when you're not playing for the national title? Obviously,
to be honest, John, like my experience is a lot of different mindsets. That Birmingham Bowl mindset, I don't even want to speak to that mindset. That was a different mindset. But the first bowl game, obviously, you're unbelievably excited. Memphis hadn't been to a bowl game in how long before the Miami Beach Bowl? That was, you're fired up, you're ready to go. That next year when Fuente's out, you feel a little bit down and in the dumps. But you did have a good season. That first year with Norvell, I feel like depending on what your expectations for the season were, you could play different. If you expected to be in a championship game and you expected to be playing for the AAC championship, and you don't even come close. You could be down in the dumps and not feeling the right way. I think this team in particular learned pretty quickly that they were, after that 4-game losing streak, that they weren't going to be involved in any type of championship game this year. And they have fought, right? The one thing I'll say about this team, they have not given up. There hasn't been that just game of quit where you like, even after that Houston game, they could have just rolled over and died on the road at East Carolina, a hard place to play. They didn't. That first half against Tulane, they didn't roll over. They came back out in the second half and played a little bit harder. So I would imagine their mindset is different than just a normal mindset, because they have had to deal with a lot of downs this year, and they've sort of kept themselves pretty even keel. But to answer your question, like, I don't know if I can really speak on this particular team's mindset, because, and not to sound arrogant or whatever, like we were generally, when I was at the University of Memphis, playing for championships. So when we didn't get into those championships, bowl games may have been a little bit more of a side thought and may have not been as exciting as they should have been in that moment. I experienced the full emotion. I mean, just the Miami Beach Bowl thought process was completely different than Boca Raton Bowl mindset. Boca Raton Bowl mindset was completely different than Birmingham Bowl mindset, and so on and so forth.
As a player, do you want a Southern Bowl game, or because like
you want to
Memphis
be?
could be in Fenway Bowl, but I think a lot of players want a Northern Bowl.
Yeah, that's interesting. I always wanted nice weather. I wanted that Florida. I wanted to be in Florida.
Amen.
At
That's
that
right.
time. Yeah, Miami Beach Bowl, Boca Raton Bowl, sign me up.
Oh, what? You don't like
as long as
Field in Birmingham?
I was gonna say, as long. Hey, listen, Birmingham Bowl might be better at Protective Stadium. I don't know, but Legion Field. Just keep that away. Keep it far away from.
It was a dump 40 years ago.
It was. Obviously I do the show with Brett Norsworthy every day. He says it was a dump when it was made. He said it was terrible the day it was put up.
Yeah, it not pleasant. And I think that's a bowl game. I think Memphis is either bound for Birmingham or Shreveport. Those are kind of the two.
Shreveport feels like.
Speaking of dumps,
Shreveport's been at a lot of games this year.
Yeah, they were there Saturday. Gabe, you may not know, but Larry is the president of the Shreveport Bossier City fan club.
Yep.
Okay.
He doesn't hate anything. We should all hate something as much as
burned down tomorrow, the world would be a better place.
What is it? The old joke: if a tornado tore down the Independence Bowl, there'd be $4 million worth of improvement. All right. Well, Gabe, thank you so much for joining us and helping us analyze this and break everything.
One last question, if it's all right. But do you expect next year to make a big jump? Because to me, my expectations for next year, looking at that schedule, seeing what Memphis coming back, I really do expect Memphis to be American Conference champs next year.
I am in a weird spot right now. My expectation is minimum 8 wins with the schedule ahead of them. Minimum. And he'd have more time and he'd still retain his job. I don't know what the outcome will be, though, right? I'm in this spot where I know you have Seth coming back. That's a huge plus. You have a guy who's going to understand your system and be more experienced. But I don't know if this team, even in the new look AAC, is going to finish games. This trend that they have started the past 2 years has to be broken. And until that is broken, it's going to be hard for me to project what that win total, what that team will look like. But expectations, certainly 8 or more wins. It almost has to be because of what that conference is going to be.
Yeah, I think, I've said, because today somebody made the comment that Hugh Freeze is not a good football coach. He's a terrible human, but he's a great football coach. And they said, well, he never won 10 games at Ole Miss. Winning 8 or 9 games at Ole Miss is like winning 11 somewhere else. And if you go 8-4 next year in the John Calipari era CUSA, that's like 6-6. Like it's winning. People don't think about that. Winning is relative. And Memphis has said their standard is 8 wins. That's their standard. That we, as dumb podcasters and radio people and media people, we didn't say that 8 wins was the standard. Ryan Silverfield stood on that podium and said 8 wins was the standard. So if you don't get to 8 next year, then what are we doing? And it's relative, right? You're not going to see you.
It's how you win. It's what losses you take and how you take them.
We're not going to see UCF anymore. We don't have Cincinnati. We won't have Houston. And the mess we've got coming in, we're going to have at least 6 new coaches in the AAC next year. All right. Yeah, something like that, 5 or 6. If you don't get 8 or 9 wins, what are we doing? Like, why are we here? And if Memphis is not at a point where they can compete with UAB and Charlotte and FAU and throw whatever, USF and East Carolina, you know, if we're not at the point where we could not necessarily be world beaters, but
beat those teams,
there is no reason Memphis can't win the conference next year on paper. There's no reason. But I agree with Gabe. We got to, you know, Memphis has to become Missouri. You got to show.
You have to show me.
Yeah, you got to be the show me state. Gabe, go ahead, Bryan.
I was just saying 10-2. That's what they'll be next year.
A little early for that, but all right. Hey, Gabe, thanks for joining.
Let's see what the portal looks like. Let's see everything else. But appreciate it, guys, man. It's been a good
tell
time.
Everybody how they can follow you on Twitter.
Follow me on Twitter at G_Kuhn, KUHN71. And that's about it.
Awesome.
Follow me
Gabe,
there.
Thanks so much for joining us. And just a programming note here. We will find out our bowl game on Sunday. And so once we find that out, we're going to take a week or 2 off here. And then when we find the bowl game out, we'll let everybody know when we're going to be back on. So for the best co-host in all the land, this is John Maddox signing off. Thanks for tuning in to Tigers Tonight.